Well, thank you for the invitation. Sorry, I have to compete with Ricky Gervais. As Bessam said, I'm going to talk about androgenetic alopecia and really the work that my lab is doing to better understand this trait. And I'm sure, as everybody here knows, the hair follicle goes through continuous cycles of growth, regression, and rest throughout its lifetime. So anagen, catagen, and telogen. And they've been very, very well described within the literature. But what some of you may not know is that another interesting fact about the hair follicle is actually composed of two main tissue types: an epithelial compartment of the follicle, which consists of the hair fiber, the outer root sheath, the sebaceous gland, and then there is also a mesenchymal tissue within the hair follicle, which comprises the dermal papilla, this structure at the base of the follicle, and the dermal sheath, which wraps around the outside of the follicle. So as the hair follicle goes through this continuous cycle of anagen, catagen, and telogen, there's been really well documented changes that occur within the epithelial portion of the hair follicle, quite dramatic changes in the morphology. But my lab is interested in the dermal papilla. We see it as the conductor of the orchestra per se. So the epithelium would really do nothing if the dermal papilla wasn't present. And there are actually morphological changes that the dermal papilla and the dermal sheath undergo as the follicle goes through its hair cycle, which are less well described in the literature. So I'm going to talk about them now. Firstly, when the hair follicle is in anagen, we have this flame-shaped dermal papilla, and then the dermal sheath wraps around the outside of the hair follicle, as you can see here. And on scalp, in scalp follicles, the papilla consists of around 1,200 cells. In telogen, in comparison, the papilla is a spherical shape. It's surrounded on its outer core by dermal sheath stem cells, and it contains about half the number of cells that we see in the anagen dermal papilla. And as the follicle cycles, we go through these continuous fluctuations in terms of the size and shape of the dermal papilla as it goes from anagen to telogen and so on throughout the life of the follicle. And these changes occur because of movement of cells either out of the papilla or into the papilla, termed efflux and influx. So in the anagen to catagen transition, there is a migration of cells out the base of the dermal papilla into the surrounding sheath. And these dermal sheath cells then undergo apoptosis, leading to the smaller dermal papilla that we see in telogen. And then in the telogen to anagen transition, there is a proliferation of these dermal sheath stem cells that wrap around the outside of that spherical core. And after these cells have proliferated, they then migrate in, and they're a fuel source essentially for the dermal papilla. So they migrate into the papilla structure, enabling it to regain its size. And then